Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Captain Underpants, which we'll be getting into today. I'm your host, Beatriz, Mourad, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hey.
And April Collins.
Hello.
How are you guys today?
Pretty good.
Good.
It's a nice hot Saturday.
It's very hot.
Yeah, what the heck? It's like almost fall. What is this?
Climate change, man. It's something. I'm fine, and I'm excited for today. So, who here has read, at least has had a Captain Underpants book? Because I had a few, but that was before before Harry Potter happened, so I didn't really read when I had them.
Yeah.
I never read the books at all, so I went in basically blind.
But you know what? I feel like that's best. I mean, I feel like I kind of also went in blind. I had an idea, but I didn't read any of this, so I didn't know any of the story.
Yeah, I hadn't read any of it. I actually, before I sat down to watch it, actually Googled what it was about.
That makes sense.
Because I was and the people that I had talked to, they were like, yeah, Captain Underpants movie. And I was like, cool.
Underpants, huh? Interesting.
Right.
Go on.
And I'm really, really glad that I Googled what it was about before I watched the movie, because I feel like if I hadn't done that, I would have been completely lost and probably would not have enjoyed the movie at all. So
really, that's interesting.
Yeah. That is really interesting.
We'll get into it. But we gotta set it up. So for anyone who isn't familiar with the Captain Underpants, a brief synopsis of the movie straight from IMDb is this. Two overly imaginative pranksters named George and Harold hypnotize their principal into thinking he's a ridiculously enthusiastic, incredibly dim-witted superhero named Captain Underpants. The film was released in theaters this past June and just recently released on Blu-ray and DVD. Disclaimer, after a brief non-spoiler discussion, we will be getting into spoilers, but I will warn you beforehand, don't worry, and hopefully you can decide by that point whether or not you want to continue with us or watch the movie yourself. And with that said, let's get into it. Did you guys like this movie? Michelle.
I did.
Oh, April, go.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was like, no one spoke, so I will. But no, I did. I enjoyed this movie. It was fun for me. I laughed. There was one thing that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and we'll get into that. But it was good. I had a great time. So it was what is it? The animation and stuff like that, worked well for me, considering the nature of the movie and I guess the story and all of that. It was definitely a DreamWorks production. So it gets 2 thumbs up for me.
Awesome. Michelle?
Good review. I really liked this movie. And let me preface by saying when I was a kid, I honestly really loved Captain Underpants as a series. I didn't realize until recently when I was doing research for this that the series is ongoing, which blows my mind, because back when I was 8, I read this stuff and there's still books coming out. Yeah,
it ended it's 2 years ago.
Oh my god, it's probably 20 now or something. Yeah.
I was reading the Wikipedia page and stuff like that, because that's where you get all your information. But yeah, the books actually stopped 2 years ago, in 2015, and I was like, what? Really?
That's crazy.
I remember those coming out when I was a lot younger. That's a really long run for a book series.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I don't know, I really love them. I wasn't so crazy about even in terms of the villains, Poopy Pants is not my favorite. There's the wedgie woman who's way more cool. There's so many. But I can see why they chose him for this movie. He's pretty iconic. But I don't know, when I was a kid, I wasn't great in school, but I like to draw a lot, and I just I found those books very affirming in that sense, and the fact that George and Harold always got into pranks, and they just kind of did what they wanted, and there wasn't really a moral to those books at all, which I think parents kind of hated sometimes. Like, well, what's the lesson? There's no lesson. Kids should have lessons, but kids love that there weren't lessons. Like, that's why people liked them. And just like, I don't know, like the Flipperama stuff, and it was just like a really fun series.
That's
so.
right, they had Flipperama. Oh my god!
Yeah.
I'm totally
so
lost
good.
here.
It's nostalgia wave. Yeah,
seriously.
like that's how. Yeah.
I'm having these flashbacks to like the Scholastic Book Fair, which
I know!
happened.
That's exactly when I get them. It's like,
Book fair was awesome.
what kind of books do you want, Michelle? Do you want like actual literature? No, I want like bookmarks and I want cats and underpants again. Yeah! Like that was totally the kind of child I was. But like seeing this movie was just like, I don't know, it felt like a hug to my childhood in that sense. Cause just like, they got the drawing style like so good. Like rendered in 3D, like it looks just like you'd think it would from like the style, and even like the beginning when they're like imitating the style of the comics, and just like, oh my god, it just like it made me so happy. I think the people in charge of this definitely had a lot of love for the source material, and that came through like in leaps and bounds. So I had my heart was very happy watching it.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Like I'm so happy you guys enjoyed it. I didn't, but it makes me.
Gotta tell us why.
It makes me so happy that you did. I don't know. Okay, like objectively, from an objective standpoint, like I can say that the movie looks beautiful. I was so stunned by how well it like the actual just character designs and the character style, the artistic style translated from 2D to 3D. I was just very impressed with a lot of things. But it's just not my type of humor. It's just, it just isn't.
It's total kid humor of a very certain age.
It's definitely a kid's movie, like in all aspects of that phrase. Like, so I can totally see like any person like in our age range, because I don't know what your guys' ages are, but I'm old.
Like me, 20s-esque, yeah.
I'm like late 20s, but anyway. So
in the 20s, question
in
mark.
the 20s, question mark. But like, it's totally like it's a kids movie, like which makes sense because it's based off a kids book, and so like I'm in. Like for me, I enjoyed the fact that I don't feel they tried to cater to adults in any way. Like it was like I didn't notice that because normally like in kids movies I'll like everyone can see like whenever they're like they threw that joke in for the parents, and it's like they didn't do that at all. Like they were like, no, we don't care about you guys. So
really, like I found some pretty like I guess I don't know if the proper word is mature, but there are some like themes in the film that I guess from the lens of like Harold and George, maybe not, they won't like say it outright, but there are some themes where I'm like, oh, but this is like an issue in like real world issue that no one, like the people, you know, like I can see like, I wouldn't go so far as to say like, oh, adults will never enjoy this movie, or like, oh, you need a kid humor, because I don't know if it's necessarily kid humor, but more like potty humor, which for certain,
it's very much potty.
I think it's cool. Yeah,
I think like that's a proper way to term it, because adults like potty humor too. Like that's like a fair like type of humor to like. It's, but I don't know. I just, for me, that type of humor, even when I was younger, was never my favorite. So I don't know. Like I could stand back and like, if I get rid of my subjectivity, I can like say like, okay, this was well done. I like how this was doing. But this was the second time I watched the movie, because I actually reviewed it on my YouTube channel, like when it came out in theaters. And it was just, I was hoping that a second watch may like make me appreciate it more. And it just reaffirmed the fact that I found this movie so utterly boring. And it's like, nothing, like, I'm so happy people enjoyed it. I was so worried. I was like, oh god, what if, like, no one likes it, like Leap? But hopefully
Leap had serious problems.
Yeah, Leap had, like,
we're not going to
problems.
talk about Leap.
Okay. All right, that would be the movie we'll never discuss again. But
we don't talk about Leap. About Leap, we don't talk about Leap. Like, let's move on.
but yeah, but this movie does, like, it's really well made and well thought out. So I will give it that. But just warning for anyone who finds fart noises just part of human function. This is not your movie.
This is not your movie.
That's such a good way to describe people like this.
Just know what you're getting into, all right? I feel like if people knew what they were getting into, they may be a bit more prepared. But you know what? Even second watch, when I knew what I was getting, I was like, all right, okay. But yeah, something that I do want to talk about, which I was surprised by how well it was the voice cast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the voice cast, like, very much so. And then there was a couple of, like, characters who I wasn't sure who voiced them because it sounded so, like, unlike what they, like, how they speak and things like that. Because I feel like often with, like, big names, they don't really change their voice whenever they go in and do, like, an animated movie or anything like that. Like, it's literally just them talking and reading lines. But, like, for a lot of these people, I was just like, oh, like, that's you? I was unaware of that. Like, I could not tell. And even, like, there was, who was it? George's, he was voiced by Kevin Hart, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was Kevin Hart at all until like, I literally, like, went back and saw it, and I was like, that is not who I thought voiced it, like, George. I thought it was, like, what is it? What's his name? I thought it was Aziz Ansari for, like, most of the movie. And I was like, oh, now I hear Kevin Hart. Never mind. Like,
I totally agree with that. Like, I was in love with Melvin, and then I found out after the fact that Jordan Peele voiced it. I'm like, oh my god, yes,
right?
that's amazing. But also, I had no idea that was him the whole time during the movie.
No, I didn't think that at all either. Like, I had no idea who voiced him. I was like, oh, who voiced Melvin? I'm gonna find that out. And then at the end of the movie, I was like, that was Jordan Peele? What?
Yeah.
Like,
I will say,
so good.
This it's these type of movies, like, kind of make me think back on, like, movies that I grew up with as, like, a child. Like, say, for instance, Toy Story. If I had never seen Toy Story before and I had watched it as an adult, would I had, like, felt that was Tom Hanks as Woody? Like, would that have stood out to me? Or would it have been like, oh my god, he so became this character and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because something that really spoke to me was that, like, Kevin Hart sounded like a child. Like, he
didn't sound like Kevin Hart at all it wasn't until like afterwards, like, that I knew it was him that I picked up on it. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
I had to be told
totally.
who it was.
Totally. Like, I knew it was him. Like, I knew that was Kevin Hart, but I was just like, it didn't take me out of the movie because he so sounded like a young boy, and I was just like, oh my god, because he's done other voice work before, and in the other voice work, he's done more of the just do Kevin Hart, but, like, do it.
Be this character.
Exactly, just in the body of, like, a very small, cute bunny. You know what I mean? Like,
but to be fair, Your Life of Pets was such a mess of a movie. It was.
But look, it's not like a jab at it. It's more of a, okay, like, that's like, there are people who, like, sometimes for, like, movies that work. Sometimes it's like, okay, you'll use the voice actor, or you do it for, like, financial reasons because you have to sell your movie or whatever. But this was, like, something where it was, like, a beautiful mesh of the two. Where it was, yeah, you have the big names for financial reasons, but they all really, like, took voice acting seriously. And that was so refreshing to see.
Yeah.
I agree.
I totally agree. Like, I was impressed with, like, basically every character, like, and the voice work that was done for them. Like, Thomas Middleditch, I love him so
he was
much.
good as Harold.
I know.
He sounded
like
a kid too.
Exactly. Like, those two did such a great job. Like, they sound like, I believed that they were kids. Like, I never, like, would have suspected if I hadn't already known. So,
which is mind blowing because, like, these kids, like, how old are these kids? These kids are, like, what?
Fourth grade.
Yeah. So they're like 8. right? Around that age. And these men are like 30 plus, like 40, 50,
like
30.
Kids.
Like they got kids who are older than these kids. And it was mind blowing. I was just like, well done, actors. Well done. You're doing your jobs. Well done.
You did your job. We're so proud of you.
Okay, so I think we're gonna start with spoilers now because a lot of things I do want to get into. I need to mention spoilers. So for anyone who hasn't seen Captain Underpants, just from our basic impressions, make up your mind. And if you don't care about being spoiled, okay, but shoo, we're going to talk about spoilers now. Go away. Tala somewhere else. Bye. All right.
See you later.
That's the spirit.
We need to talk about Melvin. We just...
Oh my God, I loved Melvin so much.
Okay, I adored him, but okay, so he reminds me of kind of like Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy, where he's just the character who doesn't necessarily like get it.
He doesn't get it.
He doesn't get jokes. And I don't like how they kind of treated him. They're like, okay, you're a nuisance. You're annoying. Like, you're frustrating to deal with because you just don't get it. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was just like, yeah, but like, you have to be like understanding. Maybe like, you don't know like what type of like.
You don't know Melvin.
Yeah, like,
you don't know Melvin.
You don't know like what's going on with him. Maybe like there's like, I just don't think the way that they treated Melvin.
Have a sense of humor.
Yeah, I just don't like the way they treated him. It was kind of like, okay, so this is clearly like this is like an issue. This is like he was just born this way, and you're just gonna throw him aside and make him just like an annoying, like someone that you're gonna find like either the person to make fun of or the person that ruins the mood. And I'm like, that's not the way you would treat someone in real life. Like, come on, that's a terrible message to send out to kids.
I don't know, man. Kids are mean.
I don't know.
This is a compelling argument on Melvin's behalf that I had not considered before.
It's true. I hadn't considered it either. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I do kind of feel bad for him now. Like, because kids are mean and they only sort of like reinforced that. So
I can't even remember because it's been decades since I've read any of those books. If he like is redeemed at all, maybe by the end of the series.
Does he ever have a redeeming moment?
I don't know. I feel like maybe he did later, but definitely not for the first like 6 to 8 books, probably.
Not the 6 to 8.
Poor Melvin that I read. Yeah.
All right, so Melvin will continue to be a mystery, but are there any characters beside Melvin that like stood out to you guys that you were just like, oh my God, this character?
Well, honestly, I was surprised by how nicely the movie handled like George and Harold's friendship. Like their friendship and their closeness, like as friends, like kind of was the heart of the movie, and they spent a lot of time like kind of dealing with that. And that actually I thought was like really nice and refreshing.
Totally.
And
I think they captured like that real spirit of being a kid and having a best friend.
Yeah.
Especially whenever like the principal's like, I'm going to do the worst thing that I can possibly think to do to you guys, and that's separate you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know how that feels. I was like, I hated whenever I found out like the next school year that I wasn't in the same class as my friends from the year before. And I was like, now I have to make new friends. This is terrible. Like,
the sheer like over dramaticness of this. Yeah. And like looking back, you're just kind of like, it's not that big a deal. Like you could still see each other, especially if you live next door to each other. You'll be fine.
I think I literally yelled that at one point too, before I started to feel really empathetic and sympathetic. I was just like, y'all live next door to each other. You can see each other after school.
They couldn't see that far ahead. They couldn't be open-minded. They just felt like such an immediate concern to them.
I understand that it's a very mature thought of me to have, but
I appreciate it. I appreciate that like sort of drama of like, no, we will never spend all day together ever again. That will ruin us. It's like, you need to learn about long-term relationships, buddies, because
what do they call it?
They have that distance relationship, like would never last. Yeah. I seriously love like the sock puppet like segment. Probably the best surprise of that whole movie. I was like, oh my God, why is this so funny? And it worked so well.
And it wasn't even animated. It was
like
actual sock puppet theater.
So good. I loved it.
Yeah, like something that just stood out was just how many different types of just animation styles and just overall storytelling, like ways to like incorporate different styles of kind of, I don't want to say kid-friendly things, but like, you know, how many shows were like of sock puppets that like when we were younger, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, I really appreciate that variety, that diversity that they went out of their way to do.
And the way that they like did it was very well done. Like, it wasn't jarring to switch from like 2D animation and go into a movie that's completely 3D and then have those random like 2D moments, but then you have like real life sock puppets. Like, it was never like, it never took me out of the story. So I was always very much like inside of the story while watching it, despite like the animation changes. So I appreciate that.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, same.
Cool. And what did you guys think about just like them breaking the fourth wall? Because I feel like I don't remember I have no recollection of the books that much, so I don't know how it was dealt with in the books, but was this like, Michelle, you're going to probably have to tell me, but was this like an actual way for them to get the proper tone without actually, by doing something that they didn't do in the books, by doing that kind of fourth wall breaking thing, or was it just straight from the book?
I do not remember, honestly, if it was straight from the book, but I would not be surprised if it was an element from the book, because, like, it definitely had that kind of tongue-in-cheek humor sometimes. Right. So I'd say, like, 50% chance it was from the book, 50% chance they decided to do it for the movie.
Right. Because let me just say that it was genius if it wasn't from the book, because that was a great way, because, you know, George and Harold, they're creators. You have the artist, you have the writer, they want to tell stories. And what better way to tell a story about storytellers if the storyteller can actually break the fourth wall, talk to the audience about like the craziness that's actually happening in the story that they are a part of. It's just, it was a really great sort of, there's so much like just things about storytelling within this movie that you could only do because they were breaking the fourth wall. And I just thought that was like a genius move on the part of the director.
I literally just looked it up, and apparently they did break the fourth wall all the time in the book.
In the books?
Like,
okay, great.
Yeah.
Yay,
I was wondering that too, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna quickly Google this. Like, it does it. Like, it says that it's like a running gag of the books that they would often break the fourth wall. The characters in the series are well aware that they are inside of a book, frequently referencing pages, chapters, and other books in the series. And on one occasion, George speaks directly to the unseen narrator. And another time he, right?
That's awesome.
See, that makes me want to have a narrator. That makes me want to, like, I like that they were the narrators of the story, but at the same time.
I like that they were the narrator, but I think I'm okay with there not being, like, an outside narrator, just because I feel like then they would have quickly reverted to, like, that we're going to argue with the narrator kind of thing.
See, but I would like that.
I don't know if I would have liked that.
I feel like I would have been like, or maybe like, I don't know, suddenly the director shows up of the actual movie, and then they're like, who are you? No, we're doing this our way.
No, we decided this. But yeah, I liked that they broke the fourth wall. Like, I kind of expected it, like, at the beginning, or like whenever they did it at the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, like maybe that's just how they're like setting everything up. But again, because I have no knowledge of the books, so right. But then like they would do it like throughout the movie. But it was one of those things where it wasn't like, it didn't take away from the movie; it added to it, because they were like addressing the audience, and that is something good, especially with like kids, like entertainment, is whenever you engage like the audience, like
totally.
It tests well with children is whenever they're engaged, which is why shows like Blue's Clues and Dora the Explorer were always so successful, because they constantly like broke that fourth wall and brought the audience into the movie or the TV show or the movie or whatever it was. So bravo to them.
Mm-hmm. yeah, totally. I think that I appreciate that it was consistent, because if you're going to break the fourth wall, keep breaking it. Don't just break it once and never mention it again, you know?
And like, don't ever do it again until like the end of the movie, but they did it. They consistently did it, which I liked that. Like, they kept it up instead of just like, we're just going to break it and then that's it. Like, or make it like a gag. I hate when they do that in movies.
All right, and how successful do you guys think this movie was as an origin story? Because at the end of the day, this is a superhero movie. It is an origin story. Was it successful? Because not a lot of origin stories are, especially as of late. Sometimes they're not. So what did you guys think? Especially since how this is like clearly like a play on the Superman story. And given how Man of Steel, for instance, was a pretty divisive movie, what did you guys think of like Captain Underpants' Man of Steel, like, origin storyness, even though it's nothing like Man of Steel? If anything, it's more like the actual Superman people. So, what'd you think?
I liked it. I didn't, I mean, it was nice, and I can totally see where they set up. I mean, they obviously set up for, like, more movies and things to be made, but it was also, but again, like, as someone who hadn't read the books, I like I said, I'm glad that I had read what it was about before watching the movie, because I don't know that I would have picked that up. Like, I probably would have had to watch it a second time to be like, okay, everything makes sense now. Got it. Like, kind of thing. So, but it was like whatever happened in the movie reinforced what I had already read about the books. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Michelle, what do you think?
I'm pretty sure in the first, like, 5 minutes, like, they give, like, that intro to, like, how they came up with Captain Underpants as a concept, right? You're like, well, like, when you see superheroes, they always look like they're, like, flying around in their underwear, so, like, ours actually does.
Yeah.
And they go through, like, the underwear planet he came from and how they, like, slingshotted him into the sky with underwear before the planet died for no reason.
Why dolphins? Who cares? Just go with it. Just go with it.
Yeah.
Just go with it. Why do you keep putting dolphins in
Harold just likes dolphins, guys. So I think, like, they did a good job of establishing that, and then, like, within the movie itself, you see how, like, they use, like, the hypno ring that they got out of, like a prize box, which is totally canon with the first book. And I think they spent a good amount of time, like, getting used to the fact that he was, like, their principal was now Captain Underpants, and, like, trying to see how much they could get out of, like, using that to their advantage. Get away with before, like, an actual threat showed up to the school. So I thought in terms of, like, pacing and development, it was actually, like, pretty solid in relation to, like, how much they were trying to get in that entire movie.
Right.
So I was pretty satisfied.
Okay, good. I mean, I appreciate how they actually dealt, like, this movie actually makes sure to tell you that, hey, them just snapping their fingers, it's actually not something that's gonna last long. Their plan, their, like, innocent plan of, like, oh, we'll just snap and then he'll be Captain Underpants whenever he bothers us. It's like, I like that it went out of its way of being like, this isn't something that's gonna continue. I will say that in the end, when he finally does gain the powers of Captain Underpants, I was a little bit, like, not disappointed, but I was like, this is, alright, I saw this coming. Maybe it's because that's part of the story, that's how it goes, but for me, I just thought it would have been so much better if it was just this guy.
Like, he never got
trying to fly.
Trying to fly, that he doesn't actually have the superpowers. I would have preferred that, just because that could have made just a bunch of the obstacles all the more, like, crazy and ludicrous. But, I was like, fine. I get it. This is a superhero movie at the end of the day. Fine. Give him the powers that he has to get. Like, fine. But, what do you guys think of Professor Poopy Pants? Like, a hero is only as strong as his villain. Or her villain. So, what did you think of Mr. Poopy Pants? I know, Michelle, you already said that he isn't your favorite, but...
Well, as in, Nick Kroll's, like, different than just, like, reading the book about Professor Poopy Pants. I think Nick Kroll did an amazing job. Like, his voice was just, like, so hysterical to me. Like, I honestly found a lot of his delivery, like, really on point and really hilarious during the movie.
Right. And April, what do you think of Mr. Poopy Pants, or Professor Poopy Pants? Which was written in yellow chalk. Like, it was, he wrote Professor P, and I was like, really? In yellow chalk? Really?
Yellow chalk. I know, I noticed that too. I wrote it down, but, I thought he was a really good, like, villain, and it was funny because before they even revealed it, I, like, was, like, because, I don't know if you guys know this, but I always take notes whenever I watch things, and so I wrote, like, I was like, Poopy Pants just wants to rid the world of laughter, so no one can laugh at his name, and he can actually be taken seriously in the scientific community. And then, like, not even a minute later, they had, like, his flashback scene where, like, he was gonna win the Nobel Prize or whatever.
Oh, it's tragic backstory.
I know. And they're like, is this a joke? And he's like, no, it's not a joke. It's a highly, like established name. And they're like, okay, whatever. And I was like, oh, poor guy. Like, I don't blame him at all. Like, I felt very sympathetic towards him. I was like, he just wants to be taken seriously, and he's obviously a good scientist. The only thing that I hated that his full name was Professor P.P. Diarrhea Stein.
That was so much, right? That was just so much.
It was too much. When they revealed that, I was like, nope, I'm done with you guys. Like, I was like, I can't. I was like, I've taken all of this toilet humor up until this point, and you literally named the bad guy P.P. Diarrhea Stein Poopy Pants. Come on now. Like, I was like, that is low, even for a kid's movie. I was like, that's like my one, like, I didn't enjoy of the movie. Like, I was talking to my friend about it because she watched it with her niece and nephew, and she was just like, yeah, she's like, what did you think of, like, the professor's name? And I was like, I hated it. And she's like, me too. And I was like, I'm glad we're on the same page. Like,
see, but, like, I appreciate how, like, because usually, at least this is like a trend with superhero movies now, is that the villain doesn't really have good motivations. Their plans don't really make a lot of sense. They're just evil for being evil, or just, they complicate things just for the sake of the story or whatever. And in this one, he actually,
had understandable motivation for not liking laughter.
Yeah, totally. I was just like, it makes sense. If everyone makes fun of your name, like,
discredits your amazing science.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, you could stop world hunger, and everyone just keeps telling you about your name, and it's just like, really? So
there are other ways to prove them wrong, buddy, but you know what?
Exactly. I would have been like, well, then make them forget it by being that amazing scientist you can be. But, I mean, hey, not everyone can take the high ground.
I was like, we can't expect too much out of, like, a kid's superhero movie, I guess. Like...
And hey, if they did take the high ground, we'd never get a movie. So there is that as well.
It would be far less interesting. Like,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I would have preferred just having Harold and George just go, like, trying to keep up with, like, I don't know, like, what if randomly someone snaps their fingers and then...
No, that's what happens later in the other book. No, like, anytime someone snaps their fingers, like, the change happens. And sometimes they don't know about it for a while, so something awful happens.
See, but that's the thing. We only get that at the end of the movie.
Anytime anyone snaps their fingers, he changes personalities.
See, but we only get that at the end of the movie. Like, even when he snaps, he turns. Like, that, we only got that later. So
I thought that was so crazy.
Like, I would have preferred to just, like, have that, do that as a story. If the villain's in, like, the villain was fine, but I mean, I would have been happy just with, like, the shenanigans they could have gone into. And poor Mr. Krupp, like, he's not like the nicest guy, but poor Mr. Krupp, like, the amount of mental, like, headaches, the amount of, like, mental gymnastics he's gonna have to deal with because of, like, being now two people. Like, that's
he doesn't rough. Even know he's two people.
Yeah,
that's the worst part.
He just probably thinks he's losing his memory.
Oh, yeah. Like, him, like, what is it? He woke up in his underpants places, and I was like, oh, man, like, he's gonna have some severe, like, mental trauma after all of this. Like, he's gonna slowly deteriorate, and then he's going to be his own villain. It's gonna be great. I'm over here writing.
That's great. That is fantastic. Like,
I do like that they actually give him, like, kind of an arc, though, because I don't know if that ever happened in the books. But, like, because he has, like, a love interest, and it's actually, like, they get into his house, and they see that he has, like, only one fork and only one plate. He's just, like, lonely and sad, and, like, that's his motivation for being a mean person.
Everyone needs love.
Yeah! and like, that was kind of the message, I guess. They're like, oh, we can help him out.
And I love that, like, George and Harold were like, oh, like, let's make him happy. Yeah. Like, let's set him up with this person that he's obviously interested in. And I was like, oh, you guys are so nice. Like,
and then he gave them their comics back. Like, I guess the implication is, like, maybe it got slightly better for everyone in the school, including them, now that he, like, has someone to hang out with.
We'll have to find out in the next movie.
Yeah. I really hope there is a next movie, honestly. I would totally watch it.
They titled it Captain Underpants, the first movie.
I know it's ambitious though, but I hope it made it.
See, because look, it had a $38 million budget. You probably have to like double it or something to include like marketing, and it made $104.7 million at the box office. So it made money. The question is, will we get Because I don't know, like it's not making like the $1 billion that Zootopia and any other Disney animation movie lately has been making.
Disney, like
totally, I know, but like
you can't compare yourself
DreamWorks.
to Disney.
I think you can compare DreamWorks to Disney. Like,
well, you can in terms of like the animation and things like that, but like at the same time, like because Disney like over budgets things. Like they have to make like $1 million, like, you know, like $1 billion in order to like break even some of the time, just because they like go above and beyond. I think for like a $38 million movie, this was really well done, and
it took a lot more risks too, I'd say, in terms of just like the concept and just like how they changed animation styles.
Yeah,
like, Disney has a lot of like very firm like formula things they really like to check off with every movie, and that's like part of their brand. That's what people expect, but this is like kind of its own weird thing, which is part of what I like about it.
Yeah, the other thing too is you kind of have to consider like that they, in terms of like the animation quality was great, but you have to like think about the fact that they also didn't put it as such of a high of quality as they do for like How to Train Your Dragon or anything like that. Like it was very much more
that is true. But I mean, because I feel like that's more but that has less to do with them like not wanting to like.
I think it's like a stylistic thing.
Yeah, that's more of a stylistic thing.
So,
that has less to do with them wanting to like save money and more to do with Captain Underpants has a certain style, so we don't.
Yeah, so I think that's something to like consider too, is that they didn't have to like blow out their budget in order to make like to stylize the movie to be what it needed it to be. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have to do as much like probably rendering or like put as much time into like, you know, animating like hair and things like that. Like they didn't have to do that. So I think considering like a $38 million budget, it made 104 or 105. Like it was pretty successful. Like I would be surprised if they didn't make a second movie, in all honesty.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if, say, like the investors of DreamWorks look at what the money Disney's making and being like, why can't we do that? Let's do that. So like I wouldn't, well, yes, at the same time, because a lot of people do consider DreamWorks up in that level. So like I wouldn't be surprised if they also don't. Like I could see it go both ways.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see it go both ways too, but like I'm just like looking at something. So like Moana, for instance, had a budget of $150 million.
Right. How much did it make at the box office?
It was really, really high.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like Moana made 150, right? Double that, maybe even, if you want even like say like they spent $200 million on marketing. That is still like the amount of money they've made is to such an extreme that it's like you can't even if it made a bigger even if it had a bigger budget, it's making so much money that it's still like something that like the size of Captain Underpants' budget, like just in terms of success, shouldn't like the size of its budget shouldn't come into play. Because if animated movies are making this much money, I feel like they might look at that and go, you know what? We need, if anime movies have proven to make this much money, we want to aim for that much money. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I like I said, I wouldn't be surprised, and I would welcome it. I'd go see the second movie just because.
Okay, well then let's talk about beside the Melvin thing, the other really big thing that bothered me. So I want you guys to convince me that it's not as big of a deal, but the big thing was the female problem. Like, the only prominent female character was the love interest. I saw what they were doing. They were trying so hard. They really were, because you see a lot of girls in the background. You see a lot of just, in general, just so many diverse, like a lot of shades in the background. Just people of all like shapes and sizes like in the background and I was just like, good job. But at the same time, I was like, you know, if you really wanted female representation, like if you really wanted like solid female representation, give us a female character that actually does something. Like if you actually cared, you'd go above and beyond. And they didn't. They were like trying to do it without like breaking the story, like, you know, without going too far from the story. And I'm like, I get it if the story is just mainly like male characters. And I know that there is some female villain. I know that. But at the same time, I'm just like, come on, just do something. Show us show me a female speaking role. Other than the girls singing that song with that deep man voice going like, oh yeah, or the mom or the love interest. Like seriously, like 1 page of script is 1 minute of film. Like that's usually how it goes. Well, guess what? The women speaking had like would never even fit a script, which tells me that they had less than a minute of speaking. And that to me is not okay. So tell me, convince me why like that is like that it's okay.
I think it's okay. Like, it didn't bother me at all because I mean, if you're gonna like put a female character into like a movie that doesn't have a main female character, I think that takes away a lot of it. And then I think they would have suffered from doing so. Like it would have been a lot of those like, oh, well, they tried to like be progressive and add this female character, but look at how it didn't pay off for them just because they would have wandered so far away from the story. And I think a lot of it was like, they didn't want to wander away from the story. And I guess I'm glad that they didn't, because I just can't imagine like how like having any, you know, like outside of like the lunch lady and or like the small female roles that they did have, I just can't see how it would have like fit. I mean, I agree they could have probably had like maybe like a small like, you know, some more like females just speaking, but I don't think like in my eye it didn't subtract from it. So I don't know if that's a really good enough like argument to like as a woman or from a woman to like justify not having that. But I think it was a smart decision on their part, just because like then they would have had to take the backlash of wandering so far away from such a well like established series. So it'd be like, oh, well, we just decided to make Harry Potter, Harriet Potter, like, done.
See, but like, Harry Potter had Hermione, so I don't know if that works. Yeah. But I see what you're saying. What about you, Michelle?
You just can't add a random character into things.
I agree, adding a random character probably. I mean, there was already so much they were trying to do. If they had to add in any more new characters, it probably just would have subtracted time that could have been spent on like the main characters to develop them. In terms of like the series, they really don't ever have any like female friends who help them go on adventures to my recollection. And I also honestly can't remember that bothering me. I think like because the series is really harmless and it's never like, I don't know, it never goes out of its way to put down like characters or like female characters especially or anything. And I think that's what like saved young me from like really like getting like uncomfortable with it and like not knowing why, because that definitely happened to me with like other series. But like it's something to ask about. I mean, why they both gotta be dudes? I mean, that is a fair question. I do like the fact that like I know Harold's like canonically gay, which is like kind of nice.
Is he?
And like yeah, he is.
No idea.
I wouldn't know, but maybe maybe we'll get that in the second movie, you guys.
Hopefully,
maybe that would actually be really nice if they did something with that. But yeah, it's concerned with certain things. But yeah, in terms of like girl inclusion, I don't think it like you know discludes like that half of the population. But like it's they are not as outside of like the villains and like teachers and just like random schoolmates in the background. Like there aren't any like noticeable lady people. So that I think it's fair to bring that up. I don't think it's really bothered me, but like I think it's good to be critical of all media, even if you like it. So I think I'm glad you asked us too. This is a good thing to think about.
I was gonna say I didn't even like think about it, but in my head also like this is like it's a series that was created for boys. I mean, look at the humor and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like, and so it would make sense, but also like they're in 4th grade, like there were, you know, in 4th grade, like girls still had cooties, like, you know what I mean? Like it's still like very much drawing from, it's like, I don't think them not including like females was like meant to be like an intentional harm. It was just like, okay, they're 4th grade boys. They don't have friends that are girls. Like, you know, they did it inside of the book or anything like that. But I mean, like maybe like there'll probably be a female character in the next one, especially like if, you know, the media or whoever gets, you know, upset about it, like more upset about it, I guess. You know what I mean? It's just like, but I don't think it was like an intentional, like disclude, whatever the word is. I can't think right now. But,
I get it. I mean, I don't think
they didn't have ill intentions by doing it.
Right.
Totally.
I definitely agree with that.
Totally. Like, I think like, not 9 times out of 10, but like 7 times out of 10, most when this happens, it's never like not like it's not intentional. But I mean, it's like at the same time, I was just like, all right. I mean, really, like boys weren't the only ones who like potty humor. Like, really, okay, fine, do that. Yeah.
But I think like I was gonna say, I think also like what is it? Oh, my brain's not working now. Like, oh, forget it. Pass on me.
Okay. I will say, if anything, I would have just preferred, like, if they, like, for instance, we had that scene at the end where they, like, that post-credit scene where you get a hint of, like, the next villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have preferred, like, if they were going to set her up that way, like, I get why, because it's, like, funny, like, the joke is that way, but, like, maybe, like, give her some line, something to do. Like, I don't necessarily need, like, a new character. Yeah. Like, I don't need, like, a quote-unquote... Yeah, like, I don't need a quote-unquote Mary Sue.
I also don't think that that'll be, like, the next villain either, so...
No, that's not a canonical villain.
Yeah.
But the lunch ladies do eventually turn evil, so that's an idea. Yeah.
See, like, give me that. Give me, like, a Romeo and Juliet type of thing with lunch ladies turning evil and in Captain Underpants being like, I don't want to hurt you, and then her being like, I don't know, just give me that.
That actually was pretty cool.
Right? But, and then,
I'd be okay with it, actually.
Yeah. You know, George and Harold not understanding why he can't just, like, because maybe just, like, dude, like, do a whole, like, is does Krupp know, like, is, like, Captain Underpants, like, Krupp, but, like, aware? I don't know, like, is Krupp aware of Captain Underpants, and suddenly you have, I don't know, I'm already writing a fanfic about it.
Well,
anyway.
He already knows who Captain Underpants is, because he confiscated those comics, and, well, I had a moment where I had to, like, ask myself, I was like, wait, whenever they hypnotized Krupp, like, I was like, wait, how does Krupp know who Captain Underpants is? And then I was like,
that's exactly right. He's read them all. And then I was
like, oh, wait, because he's probably seen all of the comics that he's confiscated. Okay, that makes sense now. Like, I understand why it just, like, immediately happened. Never mind.
Totally.
Like,
I meant not that he knows who Captain Underpants is as a character, but does he know that he himself is Captain Underpants? Like, he
never really figures that out. That's part of the appeal.
You know, I kind of love that sort of thing where he'd have to come to terms, like having like a very deep like character development where he'd have to come to terms with the fact that this is who he is now and all that. But anyway,
that seems like not a kid's book.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a kid's. That's why I said that I was already writing like a fanfic. So,
wait, hold on.
But yeah, so something that I found kind of not predictable. I guess cliche. Cliche is the better word. For me, is that there is this kind of dichotomy here where everyone's always like, okay, it's either one of two things. So either the movie goes, science is great, art is bad, or the movie goes, art is great and science is bad. And this one was much more on the latter. It's much more like, art, it's so great and fantastic, don't destroy these programs, and ew, science fair is such a drag. And to me, I'm just like, there's so much greatness in both. Why must there even be this like separation to begin with? Like, why must, I get it, society in general places science higher than art. So obviously, like, art itself is going to have kind of like a chip on their shoulder. And whenever they get the opportunity to tell stories, that might be a story they're going to tell. I understand that. But it's just so annoying to see again and again and just being like, okay, like, I get it. Like, poor you. Like, okay. Like, I don't know. Like, for me, like, I think there's a very deep, like, there's a problem with, like, education in that they don't, and this is how, like, this gets into, like, the film being more than just for kids, because there is some, like, very big criticism in it, and it being critical of the education system. Yeah, it definitely
is critical of public school systems.
Yeah. Totally. And I'm all for that. I'm like, instead of blaming science for, and vilifying kids who are good at science for being good at science, why don't you actually vilify the actual problem, which is that the school system doesn't celebrate both? Like, I don't know. I just find that issue is it's so much more complicated than what people are presenting. And it's like, it would be so nice to be like, hey, you're good with numbers. That's so cool. Oh my God, I loved your drawing. Thanks, man. Like, why can't we get that? Like, Beatriz, why is that so hard?
You're forgetting a very important thing about this movie. It has no morals. It doesn't have strong feelings, really. Like, it can like poke at the public school system and be like, oh, this is sad. Oh, they might cut the art program. That's sad. But other than that, it really doesn't have much of an agenda or side either way. And I think, like,
I don't know, it had a pretty really strong side like, for arts. Like, that's what frustrates me. Like, it has a very strong side for the arts. So it's not as if it's, like, amoral and that it's just disinterested. It's like, oh, like, we're not going to pit these against each other. It very clearly pits art against science. Like, that's, like, very, like, and just, like, anyone that is, like, it just how it pits, like, happiness with just anger. Like, there is the fun versus misery. Like, oh no, homework. That's so, I get, like, with kids, like, oh, homework, what a drag. But it does pit him, like, it does have a moral. Whether that's a good moral or bad moral or an agenda, it does have a clear agenda presenting in itself, which is arts are great, science is just horrible. Like, it does do that.
I think the thing then would be like, okay, so then are you saying that, like, in other superhero movies, because in other, like, superhero universes, most of the villains are scientists? And things like that. So are you saying that, like,
Iron Man is a scientist and engineer. Hulk, scientist. Spider-Man, he's all for sciences. So that doesn't necessarily hold up.
But you're forgetting about, like, the DC universe, what's his
Flash.
face?
Flash,
Bruce Wayne is not a scientist. He's a philanthropist.
Totally.
And so, but then, like, all of his, like, villains are all scientists who have been wronged. So, and, like...
Not all of them. Like, the Joker isn't a scientist. But I will say, true. Like, Flash is, like, he's what's that called? He's, the scientists that go into, like, who work with the police department. Then you have the guy who makes Batman's toys. I don't remember his name, but he was played by, the voice of God, what's his name? Morgan Freeman. Like,
oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, in those worlds, they do...
But they make villains out of those scientists, and yeah, they pit science against science, but then where's the art representation in those? So are you saying that they have a very clear agenda against art? Like, I just think that
you could say that, but what I'm saying is, you can totally think comic books have this clear agenda, like, those type of comic books have a clear agenda against art, but then you can't say that Captain Underpants doesn't have a clear agenda against science. Like, it does. Like, these things do. And I'm bothered by the fact that they do, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if I necessarily interpreted it that they have an agenda against science, just because, like, for most kids, like, things like science and things like that aren't exciting and thrilling, and you know,
that's a very big generalization. I wouldn't go so far as to say for most kids.
But like, it's a stereotype of children, and so again, like, this whole like universe of Captain Underpants was created during a time where like that was like the school system at the time, was where if like public schools were going to cut funding, then they cut it in like art programs and things like that.
They still do.
Yeah, I mean, they still do. And I'm not saying that that's okay, but I'm not saying that I think that this movie is necessarily putting science down. It's just that it just is what it is. And in this universe that was created like, I don't know, 15 plus years ago. So I don't think that if they did it, it's another one of those things where I don't think it's intentional. Like, I think it's a kid's movie. Like, the stereotypical kid is not thrilled by the idea of science. A lot of, and I'm not saying that a lot of kids aren't, because like, I like science. I think science is cool, but I also really enjoy art, and I like enjoy more of like I will just say arts in general. Like, I mean, I'm a broadcast media major so it's just that I don't think that if there's an agenda, I don't think that would be what it is. I think they were just trying to turn like a fun series of books into a fun movie. And so if that's what takes place in the books, then that's what takes place. Like, I don't think it was like an intentional harm.
I want to add to that. So like this movie existing like on its own, like I think you could definitely be like, hey, why are they so mean about science? Science is great. It does all these good things. Don't hate on science. But in terms of like if they do more, like I think Professor Poopy Pants is like the only scientist who's ever a villain. Like a lot of times it's like there's a toxic waste leak at a chemical plant and it turned all the toilets evil. Or like the lunch ladies have really nasty food and it makes all the kids turn into zombies. Or like lightning strikes this other toilet and now it has arms. Like it doesn't care so much about science. And I think maybe part of the thing that's missing is that like, so I feel like these books are very, very personal to the author, because Dave Pilkey, when he was a kid, he had ADHD, and he did really bad in school, and he was always like doodling on the back of his like papers and stuff, and his teachers like gave him a really hard time about it and kept saying like, you can't like draw for a living, like what are you gonna do, like your life's not gonna be worth anything. And it is like he did a series of like very silly comics that like totally took off and kids read them all the time, and he was kind of like, woohoo, like it worked out anyway, take that, third grade teacher who said this wouldn't go anywhere. And I think from his perspective, like these books, I don't think he's really trying to bash like science. I think he's more just bashing like sometimes school is just like really boring, and sometimes like some things seem really stupid for no reason, and like he's pointing fun at like school systems in general, not like particularly science, but like I can see your point too, Beatriz, because like this movie is kind of like, wow, the villain's a scientist and look how evil he is, and like Melvin, wow, he's like such a stick in the mud, and I wish he just had a sense of humor. But like, I don't know, in terms of the series as a whole, I don't really think it has that kind of perspective. But like, I do think it's fair to be like, well, like this does have implications, even if they were intentional, that say things about things that, aren't super great.
Totally. Like that's my issue. It's like, I don't care if the stereotype was intentional or not. I don't care if it didn't mean any harm. It's a stereotype nevertheless, and it should be called out. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, like, all right, intentions don't take away from impact, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's super fair.
So, but that's beside the point. So let's talk about these song choices. I'm trying to get through this because I had like this list, and it's just like, okay. So a lot of the song choices were on point. I was like, well done. But there was this one song that I just do not understand.
Is it the Weird Al one? Because I really love that
No, I love that song. That's a great song. And
I thought that was really appropriate.
Yeah, I was so happy.
I was like, I love the choice. I love that it was Weird Al doing it. I love that it's at the end, like the end credits. It makes perfect sense. What I don't understand is that random breakout into song about Saturday. I was just like, you're not even gonna finish. Like, I get why, because I was like, oh, very funny. Like, no, you have to go to school. But I'm just like, just don't. Like, they could have done something without, like, it's just them breaking out into song. Like, that's the first, because I adore musicals. That was the first time I kind of understood people who are just like, I just can't get into people randomly breaking out into song. Because I was just not expecting that. I was just like, what? Like, why are you singing? Like, and I think by that point, they had already, like, started introducing, like, a more, like, soundtrack-based kind of thing with not original music. So I was just like, what? Why? Why are you doing this? Don't do this. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think of just the music in general?
I thought the music worked well. I mean, even like the random like song. Yeah, it's kind of weird, especially like for the characters to just randomly break out into song. But I mean, I don't know. It just happened because there was another song where the characters were singing too, wasn't there? Like later on in the movie. I think
so. I can't, yeah.
Like that one, like, I don't even know. Like, I just don't like, I was like, okay, like, you know, I don't know, I feel like that was just them checking out a box of like, animated movies, they need the song, we need to sing a song in an animated movie, so we gotta sing. And it's like, I don't know, the fact that they didn't really even put their heart into it, I was just like, alright, if you're gonna sing, like, you gotta really care. And I don't think they really did.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, last question, because we're going on a little long.
Who thought this would happen with this movie? But
I certainly didn't. I was worried that I had a really short outline, but look at us. Where are the parents? Where are they?
Like, I don't think you ever see the parents in the books ever. It's never about them. They do not exist.
It's fine.
Don't they even say? Doesn't Crump even say something about it?
Yeah,
he disses their parents.
He's like,
they're already failures.
Your parents don't care, and I was like,
oh.
I mean,
that's all the mentioning they get in the whole movie.
Like, I don't know. Like, I have not gone to a school that didn't have like one parent that was like so involved because they cared so much. You know what I mean? Like that one person,
like a helicopter parent.
Yeah, totally. So I was just like, why have these parents like abandoned their children in this horrible school? Like, what is, or like, I don't know, like you have like that one parent who's like, no, we have to bring back the arts, and it's just like, what is going on?
I thought it was a very nice like tip of the hat, because I always think about how like parenting styles have changed since like whenever, like, especially like since when I was a kid, and then like, you know, I guess like whenever these books started and everything like that. But like, I grew up in a time, what is it? They call us like the last like generation that wasn't afraid. And so like my parents would just be like, cool, it's Saturday, get out of the house. And they wouldn't care what I did until like, but I just had to be home by dark. That was the only rule. So like, I thought I was like, oh, like, I can relate to this. Like, my parents weren't really around. Like, that's not a big deal, you know, kind of thing. But then at the same time, I was just like, but where are your parents? Like, you're getting in trouble at school all the time. Like,
right.
Even when I got in trouble at school, my parents were like, excuse me, young lady. And I'd be like, dang it, like, I thought I could get away with this. Like,
right. I don't know. I just feel like them, like, moving classrooms, like that, like him separating them. Like, I feel like the parents would get involved at this point. Like, the parents would be like, why are you separating? Why are you making my child upset? Or like, why are you, like,
that would be the thing. Maybe he never notified the parents.
Maybe. I mean, he doesn't think a lot of their parents. I think it's kind of like how we were saying how this movie is like very intentionally for kids. Like, kids don't want to think about parents. They just want to think about what they're doing in school and their adventures, and their parents like kind of don't matter to them. Like, we're older, so of course it makes sense. We're like, well, what's the parent? What are they doing? What's their motivation? They'd be in on this. Like, if
where
I was
are they?
But like, for an 8-year-old, I wouldn't really be concerned about seeing parent representation in a movie for kids. So I think that's probably why they don't exist.
Totally. I understand. They do exist because you do hear one of the moms talking. But I don't know. I'm more of like, all right, if the parents are so, like, obviously that's never going to happen in this movie. It's not the movie where this has happened. But like, at least in Disney, they kill the parents. So there's an actual reason why they're not there. You know? Yeah. It's like, if you're going to remove them, like, remove them. Like, don't.
They're never take them away.
Take them away. Don't bother with it. But yeah. But anyway, that was the last question. Find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated and join the OVA Discord to interact with us directly. Tell us why you agree or disagree with us. Please convince me that I should like Captain Underpants more. I implore you to do so. Just
convince her to give it a third chance.
Exactly, third chance.
Yeah,
third chance.
Charm.
But again, just, everybody, be nice. That's all we can ask. We're humans too. We're not just voices speaking in the void. Like, be nice to us. Thanks to all our current...
You don't have to be nice to me.
No, I want you to be nice to me.
Niceness
I cry
would be
very
appreciated.
I guess.
Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Steve, aka Frequent Commenter Steve. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Andy. So guys, where can people find you outside of the podcast? Michelle.
You can find me on YouTube, you can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on Tumblr. Yep.
All right, awesome. April, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at 4th month. Enjoy.
Awesome.
It gets weird.
It always does. I mean, what social media account doesn't get weird? I wouldn't trust an account if it doesn't get weird sometimes.
Yeah, then they're not being authentic.
Exactly. Authentic TM.
There we go. I'm being
that
authentic.
That should be your
That's
newsletter, bio. Authentic TM.
Adding it right now.
Yeah. And if you want to add a face to my lovely voice, you can find me on YouTube at the Be Real Movie channel. Check out my Captain Underpants review. It's a shorter version of this. Warning, my face. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.